Welcome to Swami Reacts. Today we will share in some words about the documentary Teilhard, Visionary Scientist. This documentary is about Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He was a Jesuit priest, but in one sense he was not just a priest, not just a scientist. He was a cosmic mystic. He was a soul who dared to see the divine, not merely on the cross as his Christian background or in heaven, but in the stars, in the cells, in the unfolding, ever-evolving unfolding of the universe itself. So this film is not just about, in one sense, his life. It's about the vision we still haven't caught up with, to be honest. So who was Teilhard de Chardin? He was on one side a Jesuit priest. He was a paleontologist involved in the discovery of the Peking man. He was famous for that. He was a mystic of the evolutionary process. He was suppressed by the Catholic Church for most of his life. And he was posthumously rediscovered as a prophet of cosmotheology, if we may call it that way. So he held, among many, a radical belief, too intense for the times for many, which is that spirit and matter are not enemies, but dance partners. Still, for many people, that's irreconcilable. So we are speaking here about many decades ago. For him, evolution was not chaos. Evolution is God in motion. And of course, this is all very tight. I came to know about Teilhard by my dear friend, Franciscan sister, theologian and scientist, Ilia Delio. And both her content, which is her Center for Christogenesis that she has founded based on the vision of Teilhard de Chardin, and Teilhard's own work has very deep inspiration into what is my recent book, Evolution in Divine Law, where I talk about the eternal becoming of God, soul, and matter, mostly from the perspective of my own Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, but also finding so much correlation in other mystical sister schools. So Teilhard will speak about that, Christogenesis, the idea that Christ, from the Christian perspective, that the divine is not only the Alpha, the Omega, but an ever unfolding now in perpetual becoming. God is not just the creator, God is the becoming. As Ilya will say, we are not talking here about the Godhead, but the God ahead. The God who is and who has the potential to become and is at every single moment actualizing his potential more and more and more and more. So you can imagine if you travel like almost a century back or something, Teilhard's ideas were too much for the church of his time, which held this idea of a deity which is utterly beyond this world, so to say, transcendent deity, overtly transcendental, and not immanent at all. Not so much at friends joining in conversation at the same table with science, contemporary science, theories like evolution. So he was coming with this inspiration, this deep love for nature, for the world, and for God on an equal level. That was a very big struggle throughout his whole life. And writing and presenting his thoughts based on his tradition, but also bringing new life and new language and new perspectives, he was silenced. He was cancelled. He was forbidden to publish his written words. And actually, he was exiled many times from different places where he was working and sent to other places more than once in his life. So his writings, whatever was known at that time, were circulated underground, basically. So again, here you have the classical paradox, if you want to call it that way, or pattern, which is many times religion suppresses their greatest mystics on many occasions. Sometimes they even kill them out of fear that they will set the whole system on fire. But that's what prophets are made for, right? We all need prophets and voices and living hearts that are fire personified. There's a famous quote from Teilhard, which he's saying again, for another second time we'll discover fire again. So his voice, his contribution was deeply prophetic. And of course, that unsettles the status quo, that unsettles the religious systems or any other system of certainty, predictability, order, because it's challenging. It's pinching us to grow, to explore the unknown, to use a new language, to acknowledge that we are dealing here with an moving unlimited, with a dancing infinite. And of course, Teilhard was not an anarchist. He was not against the church. In fact, he never left the church. He never left his order. He wanted the church to catch up, let's put it that way, to evolve with the cosmos and the divine. But again, he was wildly in love with God, but he was wildly in love with nature. He was a lover, deep lover of nature. And he needed to reconcile both. He couldn't just pick one at the expense of the other. So he never left the church. He never left his Jesuit order, despite many times friends, companions insisted on him, please leave that order and live your life in a more free way. So he didn't do so. And I will, in this sense, in my personal case, personally differ a little bit, in the sense that I could perceive that his not living that particular situation really took a very heavy toll on him. Mentally, emotionally, he went through depression many times, many difficult situations. Of course, we need to go through difficult situations, but sometimes we need to take a leap from certain situations of those things that are actually avoidable. But anyhow, I really appreciate his integrity and commitment to his faith and to his love in every possible direction. And speaking about love, something else very interesting regarding Teilhard was him being a Jesuit priest, a celibate. The feminine still played a very crucial role in his life, and this is highlighted in this documentary. He had different connections with ladies, all, of course, in a legal celibate way, but being nourished by friendships with sisters, let's put it that way, with people like Lucille Swan. She was an American artist. He shared years of intimate daily conversations, very intellectually rich correspondence and exchange of ideas. Then other people like Margaret Taylor, different people were mentioned, that even from part of his family and relatives. So he was always, he will make that point overtly. It's not something that he was hiding, but the feminine is playing a crucial role in his inspiration and vitality. And I think there is a place, as long as it's, again, happening from the right place. And I know this may be unsettled to some. There's so many cases and years of abuse from priestly and monastic orders in terms of the feminine, but there is a place for a healthy relationship, not only with the feminine, literally in the form of woman, but of course with the feminine side of each one of us. So Teilhard was a very interesting, balanced expression of this. So again, he was a paleontologist. He was into the realm of science, and he was a mystic. Science and faith, for him, these were not enemies. He saw both of them as two languages, basically describing the same mystery. That's how he, in my opinion, he processed those. So he saw, for example, from a more atheistic scientific perspective, materialistic, okay, there's only struggle and adaptation. That's the end of the story. But for Teilhard, was consciousness slowly waking up to itself. Let's put it itself. He spoke even in terms of the omega point, the final convergence point called the omega. Not as an apocalypse, but just some sort of spiritual climax. Let's put it that way. A moment when all things converge into the divine. So I will say that he reached that place in many ways. You don't have to choose, and I'm telling that to you, and I'm telling that to myself. We don't need to choose between, okay, God, the spiritual, and this world. There's no separation in one sense. The cosmos is sacred. God's presence is in every atom. In our tradition, we'll hold a panentheistic view. God is in everything. Everything is in God. That's what Krishna says in the 6th chapter of the Gita. For he who sees me in everything, and sees everything in me, and never lost to him, her, he, she is never lost to me. So the cosmos is sacred, and evolution is grace in motion. Evolution is not merely a mechanical, random, purposeless process. And so it's, again, very related to the theme of my recent book, where I dedicate the last chapter, the 4th chapter, to matter. And I call it the depths of matter, and speak about the evolution of matter, the unfolding of the material energies, very much related to the background of love, the ultimate force in evolution. So personally, I really love the documentary, more than 2 hours, or 2 hours approx. And it gives, for those who do not know about Teilhard de Chardin, it gives a very beautiful insight picture access portal to the heart and life of this very interesting soul. And I think the contribution of Taylor remains he was very much ahead of his time, like many great seers, visionaries, and prophets. And that's why they go through canceling and scapegoating and ostracizing and shunning and killing sometimes. But he remains so crucial for today. We live in a world in postmodern society where nowadays, for many people, meaning and purpose is something that you just made up. There's no inherent sacredness to anything. We live in a very disenchanted universe. Lots of disconnection, lots of disillusionment, lots of despair, lots of anxiety rates going high, depression, suicide. Again, as a byproduct of, with all respect, the postmodern mind, which of course in one sense is a very valid critique to the modernistic mentality that was before it, which was very naive and it's all about progress. And the more we grow in technology and rational capacities, we'll conquer everything. And then we have the Holocaust coming from the most rational place on earth, Germany. So that created a very deep cynicism, I would say, and postmodernism in big part is a necessary critique to the naivety of modernism, but also it goes to an extreme with, at one point, nothing has meaning and purpose. Everything is purely subjective and the universe is disenchanted. So Teilhard's vision, in my opinion, brings the enchantedness back to reality and to the very immediacy of matter. He calls us to hope, not naive optimism again, but hope rooted in the evolutionary labor of love. We want to put it that way. So these are very important points that this documentary bring. And other ones, don't fear the new. Just if you will watch the documentary, Taylor is showing that God is the new. God is ever fresh, ever new, ever evolving. Mysticism must meet science. There's a place for both at the table. They can engage in conversation and they should. The world is hungry for that, for a spiritual vision that includes quantum fields and ecological crisis and all that. That's telling to us how can we engage all in a broader and wider conversation. And in one sense, the path is not up or out. It's not about an evacuation plan to leave this place as soon as possible, but it's through. Why not to go through matter? Why not to discover the divine in every atom, through history, through pain, through everything that comes in the immediacy of the here and now? As I say, Taylor's, perhaps more importantly, is not calling us to flee the world, but to set it on fire, going back to one of his favorite words, with vision, with reverence, with love, a love that always evolves. So again, he lived much of his life misunderstood. That's the price to pay for being a visionary. He died without seeing most of his vision embraced, but actually utterly rejected by a majority. They mentioned that at his funeral there were like 10 people maximum or something. And there's a lot of sadness in him. You can see some of the last pictures in the last period of his life as shown in the documentary, and you can see he's carrying with deep sadness and grief. But yet today, again, he's blossoming. Actually, very quickly after he passed, ironically, he started to blossom, become popular. His books were published, and he's becoming what he has prophesied, basically, like a seed planted in evolution, now flowering, ever evolving, ever blossoming. So if you have the time, do yourself a favor. You can watch this film if you feel like it. It's a very interesting experience of knowing the heart of a very unique, brilliant, sincere soul. And if something does not align in every single sense with your beliefs, well, let it disturb you a little bit. Let it stir whatever needs to be stirred. Let it lift you. Let it reframe the sweet absolute, not as a noun again, but only as a noun, but as an ever-evolving verb as well. From God to Godding, God as a verb. He's not just a figure of history. Teilhard de Chardin is a voice, we could say, from the future, speaking to us in the here and now, because the future is becoming in the here and now. So if you have watched the documentary, share any of your thoughts with me, if you're with all of us in the table. And if you hadn't, just drop your comments, which all of these ideas, what's moving in your heart, what are your thoughts going where, in which direction, evolution, rejection, exile, visionary. So many things to speak about. So, see you in our next section of Swami Reacts.